Okay. So I'm 22 years old. I've been coaching now for about 5 years. So I started kind of first year of uni when I moved down to Derby. So I went from Hull originally, which is where I'm from, down to Derby for a degree in sports therapy and rehab. So my goal was always to be like a physio, like the person on the sideline running on. That was always the goal since I was probably about 10. But I always liked coaching. I coached on like summer camps back in Hull for about 3 or 4 summers, and I just thought I really liked the environment. But it was like multi-sport, so it wasn't really anything specific. And then while we were at uni, we got the opportunity, if we wanted to go to like a Derbyshire FA conference. And it was girls only, and I just thought, oh, why not? Like, I'll go. And there was like 3 of us that turned up, and they were like, oh, so what we'd like to do is kind of get you involved in coaching. And I was like, oh, wow, like I just thought we were kind of going to listen, and it was kind of like, we'd like to get you involved. And that's kind of where it started. So I was in contact with Hilton Harriers, somebody who leads that up, and they were like, we'd really like to bring you in. And at that point I was like, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I went to the session and I was like, I have completely out of my depth, but luckily I was the assistant, so I had a really good like head coach that I learned everything I know pretty much from. So I started with them, under 10s, amazing group, completely hyper 10-year-olds, where you don't need a lot of detail, but you need a certain type of personality, I think, to work with that age. So that's where I started, really. And I was with them for 2 years, so 2 seasons, kind of watched them from like 9 to 11. And Glenn Hilton that put me on my level 1. So I was really fortunate that that's kind of where I started. And I always go back to see him because I think I wouldn't be where I am without him. And then like fast forward to now, there's quite a few bits in between that, but fast forward to now, I work up at St George's Park, which is like pinch me moment every day that I drive in, to be honest. But I do the experience day sessions there. So any team, we get anywhere from like under 8s up to seniors. So it's quite nice to kind of work with a vast range of ages. So yeah, that's where I am now. I also run like the hydrotherapy sessions there as well, just as a little bit of kind of an add-on, just so I am using my degree a little bit because I did neglect my degree slightly. So yeah, that's where I am at the minute. And I work for them kind of on a part-time basis currently, and then see what the next season kind of takes us, really.
So there's quite a lot in that, which is really interesting, right? And there is a question posed around your career sort of development and where you're at and where you currently and what you're currently doing, right? But initially when you started talking, I was like, well, you can hear the accent kicking in now, right? And then I was going to ask where you were from, and then you mentioned it, right? Because you can just hear that slight twang as you're talking there, right? Which is great.
Northern twang.
That's it, the Northern, which is lovely to hear. But there's a lot in that. Yeah, and I like the fact that you're doing experience day coaching because you don't often hear of roles like that. And it gives you that great exposure, as you said there, to work with the multiple age groups, because you get to experience lots of different avenues as a coach. You sort of get to pick out which one you want to work with in terms of age group, whether you were to go and work with 10s because you prefer that, whether you prefer the older age groups with the seniors, etc. And you watch the videos on YouTube of when the England team arrives and they're getting out the taxis and stuff, and that is an amazing watch. You can just feel it and how special that is. But for you to be at St George's Park yourself day to day in the incredible facility, that makes a huge difference when you are a coach, when you are a professional there, and certainly when the players and individuals arrive, it just gives them that bit more motivation compared to some of the different environments and experiences that they could have elsewhere, for example.
Yeah, 100%. I think the environment there is just such a lovely one, and just one where you feel completely at ease the second you walk through the door. Like, it's so weird to describe, but they're just a lovely bunch of people. And I think I've learned through my kind of 5 years, so not very long, that like the team around you is so important, and the team there is absolutely brilliant, just from everyone, from kind of like the reception all the way through to the ops people, through to the other coaches that you work with. And like the opportunities that I've got from St George's, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to appear in one of the videos, which is quite nice. Up with the Lionesses at like a bit of an experience day, so that was like amazing. I think like 14-year-old Chloe would have been like screaming at that point, and that was like screaming inside when it was happening. And just we've had loads of Nike events, and you know, it's just like such an amazing exposure, I think, just to get involved with and see how like the Lionesses work, and just kind of walking through and seeing what they're doing is kind of really surreal.
And I see a lot of that on my LinkedIn, right? And a lot of the female coaches who go to the university degree through UFCB, I believe it is, and then they go through like the youth committees and things like that, right? And the amount of shares that they have in terms of the different stories, and saying that they spent a day with a lioness, or the Serena Wiegman's been around, or they're at St George's Park, and then they're in and around Wembley Stadium. They're incredible experiences, which I really think shape young coaches, and it gives them that bit more connection for them to aspire to want to work there full time. And you know, you get that experience where you are screaming inside, and you know you want that full time, because that feeling is just there, right? And it is pretty special as well. And I remember when I worked with Cardiff City Foundation, I was doing a lot of stuff at our stadium, which was incredible. And then you're doing stuff for the BBC, and then the Wales national squad are training there ahead of the Euros, then the senior team are in and around. You're in the press room, you're doing all this different kind of thing, right? And it's an incredible experience as a coach, and you're loving life, and you're thinking, well, for young individuals who are coming here and they're getting to be on the pitch, and they're also part of the BBC events, etc. That's pretty exciting for them, and hopefully gives them aspirations for the future. Because as you said there, where you went from general coaching into coaching and doing foundation days and experiences, they're really important insights to certainly give young people. But you said you started your fascination at the age of 10, right? Where your interest peaked. Did you start playing football? Did you get into it through that route, or did you always have an interest in coaching? How did that come around?
I think for me, we grew up with football. My brother played, so every Saturday and Sunday we were there, and he actually played in an academy setting. So the pressure was on a little bit. So he was a goalkeeper. So we were always in and around football from a young age. I was massive, sadly, Hull City fan. Somebody's got to be. And we were season ticket holders since I was about 3 or 4. So I was always kind of in and around it. And I just thought like, oh, how cool would it be to kind of be involved? And then kind of about 10, you know, you don't really know what the world is like at 10, but I was kind of like, I'd love to be the runner runner. That's what we kind of called it, like the person that runs on and does the injuries. And so I started to do everything around that. So kind of GCSEs, I was like, right, I'm picking like PE, biology, and like anything kind of around that subject. At college, that's probably where I actually started coaching. So I did my personal training courses with a company, and they were like, you're really enthusiastic, you're kind of really our vibe, would you be interested in coming on our summer camps? So that's kind of where it started. But I think the fascination from a young age was being around it all the time and being like, how cool would it be? I did start playing, so I played for my primary school, but as you can imagine, like back then, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but about 10-12 years ago, there wasn't a girls team. So there was 2 of us. One of them was a year older than me, so I was like the baby of the team. We played in the boys' team, so there was 2 of us that were kind of like the pressers. That's all we kind of got told to do, just go and press. So that was kind of where it started. And then when I moved up to senior school, they didn't really have a football team, so I stopped playing. And I kind of thought, I miss it. I kind of miss the changing room atmosphere. I miss the build up to game day. So when I went to uni and I started coaching at Hilton Harriers, I kind of got roped in to playing. They were like, we're short this weekend, will you come? And I was like, I haven't played for like 8 years. Like, this is going to be a disaster. And then they were like, no, come on. And I was like, okay. So I went, and I think I did all right because they asked me to sign for the rest of the season. So I must have done all right. And then I thought, I've kind of got the fire back a little bit. But I think it's really difficult to be player and coach. I think that's 2 very different kind of things. And you realize as a player everything you do want in a coach and everything you don't want in a coach from past experience. I think so that's massively shaped, I think, who I am as a coach based on my experience of who I've had. And I just thought I want to have what I didn't have. So I didn't see a female ever, like as a young player coming through the ranks, even at primary school. I didn't see a female taking the football team or football session. So I think that's where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, one of my questions was going to be, what is your ultimate goal for when working with a player? But you sort of touched upon it there, right? Because you're talking about shaping their experiences to be better than what you had, and how you were impacted as a player, the gaps which you had, not being coached by a female, and now sort of giving back and being the female which coaches them, bringing them together as a group, having more opportunities, and maybe not as much as disconnect. And obviously, the environment around you will shape that because, with the more women's teams there are, the current programs, the current push for it, the media, that's going to be really supportive of your goals in the actual respect of the objective which you have. And I was the same because I was in and out of football. I enjoyed coaching more than playing, and I had a bit of ups and downs when I finished at 13, and then I sort of was in and out of 14, 15, 16, never really came back into it. At 16, went to a seniors team, went, no, this is not for me. And then went on to coach ever since then. And my biggest objective is, how many minutes can I generate for players? How great can I make their experience? And can I enable them to really enjoy their experience where they can choose to stay on at 16, or they have the quality to stay on at 16, whether they want to be a coach, but can their experience be a much better experience than what I had as a child? And that means delivering training twice a week relentlessly, right? Where I wouldn't be cancelling for weather like today, where I'd be playing on a Sunday, and the team are getting there half an hour before and preparing, and they're sharp, and just little touches like having a bench and getting the players prepared and a drinks bottle case, and just to make them feel a little bit more professional. But my biggest objective was that, and it's great to hear that you have that objective as well. But you also touched upon your influences there from being a young age, being from a family environment, in terms of what you saw on the pitch then, seeing your brother, and what made you be a runner. Because I'm a teacher full time. When I go back and I work with certain kids, some of our most challenging kids, and they come and see me and spend time with me, and hopefully I make an impact where they improve their behaviors and go out every day, right? And there's two boys which regularly come into me. One wants to be a football coach, and I've just put him on his FA Playmaker Award. He's just completed that. And the other is a bit more of a rugby boy, but plays football with the boys, kind of thing, right? And he's saying, "Sir, what have you done? All this other, all my mate wants to do now is every time we go to play football, he just wants to stand on the side and shout tap dicks at us and go, right, I'm going to be coach." I'm like, good, because that's the kind of kid that I was when I was younger, right? He already knows where he wants to be. So it's great when we have that impact, and hopefully you might see, some younger females and players which you work with on a wider perspective, where they get to realize that coaching is for them. And playing isn't always for everyone, but coaching is such a rewarding route to be in.
Totally agree. I think playing as well gives you a different view on things. So you don't understand, I don't think I did, especially when I was playing, how much actually goes into it. I just thought, they just turn up and kind of wing it. And you're like, there's so much that goes into it. And there's so much planning. And it is late nights. It is in the rain. It is during a thunderstorm. And you kind of stood there going, okay. I remember the worst thunderstorm I've ever had. I was working at Birmingham City at the time. And we were on a pitch and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and it just absolutely like hailed down. And I had to squeeze, like wring out my kit before I drove home. But you kind of stand there and go, that's why you do it. Because you appreciate when it's boiling in the summer and you're like, oh, I'm outside. But I think definitely I didn't appreciate how much a coach does. And now I do. And I hope that the teams that I'm with appreciate, like yourself, like how much we do behind the scenes, and just making them feel that little bit extra special with a bench or a water area or someone they can go to. Because I think now there's a massive thing around coaches and the relationships that they build with the players. And I think that's so important, because I think the success I saw with a few of my players, especially because I've worked with like 14, 16 girls, like I would say is the main age I've worked with. I think that's quite a difficult age in terms of them needing that open communication and feeling heard. So I think that I didn't have that when I was in the 16. So I was like, I have to bring that. And I think that's so huge around, not just about football, because they're going through so much other things as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I saw when my brother's environment and what they had access to, and when I was going to Hull City and everything, and you thought, right, what do I want to take from that, and what do I kind of want to leave from that?
Mm-hmm. And that's good, because again, I was going to ask you, what do you sort of want to be as a coach? How do you want to be a coach? And what are the things which you've taken away, which you really keep, and the things that you sort of discard, right? And I was thinking about that in terms of the type of podcast where I was as I was preparing for this, and it's a sort of similar reflection, because you get to look at different formats of a podcast and the way that people come on and present and interview. And it's same what you said there with coaching. You pick up things that you want, and then you discard all the other things, and you start to develop in the way that you want to be as a podcaster slash as a coach, right? And it's good that you talk about communication and the differences as players are growing up in that wider perspective. Because one of the biggest things which I try to hammer home here on the podcast is, well, actually, it's not just the grass. It's not just looking at how the players perform. It's not just their strength and conditioning. It's not their recovery. It's much more than that. How can we look at the relationship? What is their psychology? What breakdowns have they had at home? How has home life impacted them? What trauma have they experienced, and why don't they have those relationships? What are their unique skill sets which we can develop where they could become leaders, but we haven't just unpicked that? Or why is their behavior showing in a different way? And there's lots of different disconnects, and there's lots of different impacts to every individual. So I try to highlight that as much as possible. But the important thing there is communication, and it's talking about the wide perspectives about the growth of individuals. So how would you say you communicate as a coach, and what are the differences in the types of communication that you have across your spectrum from your experiences? Because you've done foundation coaching, S&C, you've been a masseuse, you do experience days, and that requires a lot of different types of communication.
I think my communication style's definitely changed. I think with the under 10s, when I first come in, I just thought it's orders like as quickly as you can, like with kind of 1 word, 2 word. And that's kind of what I saw. So that's what I thought, oh, that's my style as well. But I think it's so important to kind of have your own style. And I was thrown in at the deep end slightly because I went for a job at Burton, ETC, with an under 16s group. And I'd only really ever known under 10s. And for some reason, I got the job. And I kind of got I felt like I got thrown in. I thought, right, my style has to completely change, because we're talking 9-year-olds and we're talking 16-year-olds looking at pushing for the first team. So it's a completely different, environment. It's a different tactical look on everything. So I think that's where my communication changed. I would say I was very much more direct, a lot more kind of tactical with my information, rather than just like press tackle. It had to be like that. And I learned that you've got to be quiet on the sideline, because I was very much like young. I want my voice to be the only voice that's heard. And now I'm like, you have to let them play. You can't control everything. So I think that's how my communication style's changed. And I think I kind of have different hats, because when I was from the 16s, I kind of went into a senior environment at the same time on placement. And I was kind of the physio, assistant physio. Then I did a little bit of S&C. Then I dubbed in a little bit with like activation coaching and things like that. So it was like a different hat that I wore. And I think it's very different, like the S&C side of things to the coaching side of things. So with S&C, I think it's very much like you have to be the motivator, because half the time they're coming in from work and they're going, oh, we don't want to do an hour in the gym doing arms. Like, we don't want to do that. So I think massively the motivator, but if you asked anyone, I would say they'd say I'm quite strict. I've got quite high standards, because that's what pushed me as a player. Somebody who would tell me if I'm, not pulling my weight, essentially. And not everybody works like that. So I think I've had to adapt in terms of what do I say? How do I say it? I know a lot, like my old team, my last team, they're very much like, she's got really high standards, but I know I can go to where she's really approachable. I think I'd say I'm quite calm now than I was. Like on the sideline, I was a bit of a lunatic, to be honest, like walking up and down with every single ball. I was in everything. But now I look at it from like a bigger picture, because I think I've had to in 11v11 to go, right, what's going well, what's not going so well. And I think I'm just really honest with my communication. I think you've got to be, if they're not doing what I'd like them to do, or they're not, doing what they're capable of doing, I am going to tell them, because I think you have to do that. And there's a way to do that. And I'd never say that I'd raise my voice or do anything like that, because I was in that environment as a player, and I don't want that for anybody else to feel like, oh, I don't want to come, or, But yeah, I think I'm really honest, really direct. People call me like a puppy, like I'm loads of energy. want to get involved with everything. That was kind of like my nickname, like the puppy, that she wants to kind of be involved. But I think I've learned to like turn it down. I think especially at St George's, I think communication is so key because they are coming for an England experience. So you have to put on an England experience, and there is pressure with that, like there is. So I think when I look at my under 10s coaching self through like under 16s, then first team, then like under 14s was my last kind of manager role, through to St George's, I just think like it's such a young, naive person to now having to be quite mature in quite a senior environment. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of the communication spectrum of how it's grown through the years.
No, I really like that and appreciate the way that you've put that together, because you've broken it down quite a lot and there's a lot to unpack, right? Because you've had such a great reflection in terms of how you work with different groups, your own growth as well, how you've grown over time, the different stance which you've had, how the experience and roles have shaped you. We've talked about the different types of environments, the difference within roles between strength and conditioning to being, a physio, to being, a coach, and looking at what you deliver tactically, how you deliver that types of feedback, the importance of having your own standards, your own
Yeah,
principles, which you have, but there's getting them across, because you don't have to shout at the players all the time to be that strict, sort of coach to really instill what you want. Because I work with lots of different age groups, and I know how I manage my under 18s compared to how I manage under 10s is going to be very different. Now, with the under 18s, they have a lot of strict rules. There's some barriers which they have, but I want them to be creative and I want them to enjoy it. But they have to understand where they're under 18s and now they're out drinking and partying, and they're getting girlfriends and they might get a job and they have all these different things. They can drive. They have to be guided in a very different way, and sometimes they need that sternness to come down on them a little bit harder, such as, while you're out drinking last night, this is why you're underperforming. It is okay to have a night out, but perhaps come in a little bit earlier, like an hour earlier, perhaps have one or two less drinks, right? And I want to be a coach which accommodates their growth and their learning, because they're only 18, 19 once, and I want them to enjoy it, and I don't want to strip that back from them entirely. But then when you're with the under eights, you still go in and instill your standards. This is what I expect. You're going to turn up early. I want you to do this as soon as you arrive. We're going to, again, be creative. And this is what we're going to plan to do in our game tomorrow. And then we explore what we can learn for the week after. So you still have your different standards. It's just how you tailor them to every group. And again, that communication is important, because you might come down hard on that 18-year-old and you may be like, right, you're not going out drinking. You might be like, oh, right, I'm off then. I'll go play for a different team. I don't like the way you speak to me. I'll go play for someone a bit more casual, or a manager who gives me that bit more freedom. And sometimes it's okay. You might cut the dead wood, or you might lose a player because they can't live up to your standards. But sometimes you might just tailor your communication. You've kept that player, you're able to work with them, and then that's what the art of coaching is, right? But I love your nickname of the puppy. I've never heard of anyone called the puppy before,
yeah.
right? So, what a great nickname that you have there, to really have.
It could be fun.
I love what you talk about, the energy on the sideline, wanting to be involved, driving that standard, and especially as you talk about being the motivator, because again, you sort of touched upon it there, where you got players coming in at the end of the day, they've been in work all day, they might be a little bit tired, then they have to focus on strength and conditioning, and then they really don't. They just want to get out, they want to play with the ball, they just want to get in a SSG or game environment. They don't want to be doing their S&C. They're happy to leave that to the weekend, etc. But then it's down to you to instill those standards and go, no, you are going to be doing your S&C, you are going to be doing this, there is no compromise on it, and this is and then over the forthcoming weeks as they're coming in, they know what to expect as they're coming into you. So what would you put your principles down to as a coach then? So I know you talked about being strict, I know you talked about communication, but what are your core principles when you go into any environment when you are coaching? So if I'm a young Luca, I gotta go into Chloe's session, what would I expect to see?
Very, very high energy environment, like from the off, like we're on the ball within, I would say, the first 30 seconds. I don't kind of like to stand around. Like what I'll do if players arrive early is like have a conversation with them about, something not to do with football. I think I learned that massively with like 14s to 16s, because they've got a lot going on at school with GCSEs and they need to vent, and football is their escape. So I think my principles would be high energy, on the ball straight away. I always start with ball activation. I learned that from the senior environment, that is so important, and it just gets you switched on straight away. So I always start with that. I think for me, I kind of have played around with different like tactical principles, because I've kind of had to learn along the way, I think, and gone, that didn't work, that this did work. But I'd say I really like high energy players and a trier. I'd rather have a team of triers than a team of like technical individuals, because I think you either work hard or you don't. You can't. I don't think you can instill that. You can instill that to a point, but if you've got a team who are going to run through a brick wall for you, I think that's kind of what I try and create. Somebody who, I'm going to give you everything I can, and I expect you to give me everything in return, and have that kind of mutual understanding. Really, really clear on what we're going after, I think, that day, not necessarily for the weekend. And I think it's different, like, to prioritize, and it's difficult to prioritize. Right, are we working on an opposition on Saturday, or are we trying to work on our principles and what we're doing? And I think being in different environments, you learn that, you know what, we might have to focus on the opposition this weekend, and that doesn't follow the block, and it doesn't follow what we're meant to be doing, but we've got a big game at the weekend, so we have to look at how they're playing and what we're doing. So I'd say I like a 4-3-3, massive on that, high press, high energy, you work for each other, you go together, and it's just a really team kind of cohesion environment. That's what I try and create. And sometimes you can't do that, and sometimes you get caught out doing that, but I think you've got to go with having confidence in your players and going, I believe we can do this and play this way, so this is how we're going to play.
I like the way that you put that down, and as you said there, again, it's reflection, because you're going to learn from that as you deliver that tactical approach. So whether it's your own principles which you're focusing on, or whether you're looking at your opposition, but then how you deploy that 4-3-3 in the high press, you might be caught out because the other team might sit in a low block, and then suddenly they counter attack and they're off and scoring because you're so high up the pitch, for example. But you'll learn from that in terms of, right, how many players do I sit back, how many are pressing, who goes and press, when do they press, what areas of the pitch are we looking at, what tactical lines, etc. How do we work within our units, what are our transitions on and off the ball? So you learn from that over time, and I think that comes with every different team. But when you talk about the high press, and you talked about this being the one of the only girls on the team when you were younger, right, and you were expected just to press. Do you think that has been part of an influence from being younger into how you coach now?
100%. I think we, like, through the two girls in the team, I would say we didn't get the same like technical information maybe as what we should have got. We were, you go after the ball, you go and press, and if they get round you, you better be doing doggies back to try and get it back. So I think I've instilled us, that's how I want to play, like high press. We're going to put pressure on you. We're going to try and win it high. We're going to try and score in the final third because we've won it and we've countered early. So I think as a player, I loved pressing. It's hard work, don't get me wrong. It's really hard work. But I absolutely love that. So I think that's kind of like a little bit of like childhood me in the way I play now.
When I first started coaching, I deployed a 4-1-3-2, and we were getting very overloaded where the CDM was holding the position. We were losing a lot of position, and it just didn't work for the team which I had. And I realised I just didn't have the players to play that system, and it was down to me to adapt and change. We went into a very basic 4-4-2, and our results really changed. We were part of a development centre of a free academy at the time, and just playing in that 4-4-2, very basic, very simple. You don't see many teams play it now, but it really suited some of our players and meant that we could adapt and just understand what we needed to do. But if I kept with my principles of playing the 4-1-3-2, then it wouldn't have worked for me. It would have not worked for the team, and we would have just all been failing together. The motivation would have been lost. I wouldn't have adapted. I wouldn't have reflected. And then a few years later, I went into my under-19s team. I deployed again the same tactic, and it just didn't work for us as the kind of team which we were. So we moved into a 4-2-3-1, and that worked really well for us then. And it was just that slight tweak rather than changing the formation altogether, where it really adjusted and meant that we had to look at players maneuvering into a right wing, left wing, whether they were striker, and how I managed the players in terms of coaching was then very different, because how I coach the tactic in terms of managing players, in terms of saying, right, you're not going to be striker today, you're going to be winger, right, you're not going to be winger, you're going to be striker, right, I need you to play right back, not centre back. That is a big difference then. And you can really see the growth of some of our players. And then sometimes you might do a Mikel Arteta where you put your centre back as the striker, because you have your core defence, you're 2-1 up in a game. He's got lots of energy, but you can't put him at the back because he might just cost you on a bit of pace. So you put him up front. You're just like, right, press, chase the ball down. If you're not going to play us over and we get the ball really high, we can adapt to that. And then tactically, then that's how I will manage the game, right? But there's lots which come into it. And I think the pressing style is something which I've now now adapted into. I'm a huge fan of the high press. All I want my teammates to do is to press straight away. And that's how I've adapted over time. So, I've gone from a 4-1-3-2 to 4-2-3-1 into a high pressing team and dependent on the formation which we have, and being based off the opposition. But that's part of your own growth over time. And then you find out what works for you and the kind of style which you have. But what I really like there, is what you said there. As soon as the players arrive and they've got that activation activity where you've got them, where you're either talking to them or you're getting them on the ball straight away, especially in the first 30 seconds. I'm a huge fan of that. So as soon as the players arrive, for me, they're either doing kick-ups, depending on their age, because they don't have that skill set, or they're coming in there doing 1-2 passing straight away. They're nice, they're sharp. Suddenly the next player comes in, you've got 3 in a group, and then the next player comes, you've got 4, then you split into 2-2s. Then it just creates a nice environment where suddenly players, parents sitting up, you look a bit more organized. It gives you a bit of the time, just a free flow around. You might then just have a bit of a conversation. Players know what to expect. Again, the touches on the ball, they're improving their first touch. They know the way to pass. You get them into a structure, and then you transition really nicely into a warm up. So there's lots of different things, but I'm a huge fan of that. And one of the biggest frustrations for me is when I go into a session and you see all these players standing around and they're a little bit slow getting into it, and I'm like, they should already be doing something. That is the kind of energy which I like. So I like the fact that we share those similar principles there. And it's good that you have that, and you can obviously see where that influence has come from over that period of time. But one of the questions I have for you, right, Chloe, was you said, and you've touched upon this, you've gone from masseuse to strength and conditioning coach into being a physio, into being like a team coach where you're coaching a team, right? You don't see many S&C coaches transition from their role into being like an assistant coach or head coach, right?
Yeah.
Do you prefer being that tactical coach compared to being an S&C coach?
To be honest, I think I like it, like the package that comes with it, because I think I use a lot of S&C principles in my coaching in terms of making drills that little bit more fitness based. I would say I lay the law down a little bit in terms of we have to be the fittest team in the league because I'm an S&C coach. So if we're not, it's going to come back on me. But I think I was coaching first, like coaching was first. And then I kind of already had like my personal training qualifications, worked in a gym. That's kind of what I'd done from college all the way to uni. I worked in the uni gym. And I thought, like, I really like this, but I'd love it in a bit more of an environment. So at the moment, I'm completing my UKSCA. It's been an amazing opportunity that I got through Derby County Women. I'm nearly complete, but it is a long process. So I've got like 2 more courseworks, and hopefully if they pass and everything's good, then we're through with that. But I think coaching's always come first for me, and that's what I've done mainly. S&C, I've kind of like dipped in and out, and when you go to clubs, they go, oh, she can S&C as well. So I kind of do that alongside. But with Derby County Women, I was like, they needed somebody to do pre-season S&C, and I got a phone call, would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. So I loved doing that. So I think in a senior environment or a kind of 16s up, I love doing S&C. I think especially for women, it's so important when you're talking about the number of ACLs that are happening and ligament laxity at different kind of stages of their cycle. And I love kind of researching that and making sure they've got the tools to prevent that as much as they can. But I would say, I can't really pick a favourite, to be honest, but I would say I like a physical kind of performance, putting everything together. So I think my dream role would be a head coach or a kind of physical performance coach that links everything together. So a little bit of my degree with injury prevention, a little bit of S&C, a little bit of coaching, so I can combine everything. But I think coaching's always come first. I've always been more of a coach in the coaching environment than I have S&C. But, there's been times where I have been leading S&C and leading across like 10s to 16s, and you're going, okay, I'm kind of 50-50 now with the coaching and the S&C. So yeah, and I've been a masseuse at the same time in clubs, so it's different hats. And I think sometimes it's about having as many strings to your bow as you can, but you can get caught up in, right, what hat am I in today? Like, who am I today? Because the players know me as physio Chloe, and they know me as masseuse Chloe, and they know me as all these different kind of things. And I think you're kind of pushed to having a niche. Like, what's your niche? What's your absolute kind of, which one are you going after? And I think I've always been really strong in my stance of you don't have to have one. Like, I think you can love loads of different things and have different roles. And I was at Burton and Derby at the same time, and I had like kind of my dream role because I was one of the heads of the under-16s at Burton, and then I was like one of the leads for S&C with the Derby women. So I had like the best of both worlds at the same time. But yeah, I would say it's a difficult decision to pick, but I just think you don't have to have a niche. You don't have to pick one, because I think you can be good at more than one thing, or at least okay at more than one thing. So I don't know kind of how that will reciprocate into future roles, or what I will go after kind of when I'm late 20s, 30, and I want to be pushing for a first team environment full time. I don't know what that looks like. But I'd like to think it can combine too. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I won't stop kind of doing both. Or I think I've kind of pushed physio to a side because I didn't enjoy it. So I am coach in S&C, and like a little bit of injury prevention in there. But yeah, I think you can do both, hopefully.
I like your approach to it, right? Because you talked about that holistic picture where you combine S&C, how you support players, how you bring that together tactically, and I think that gives you bigger diversity as a coach in terms of how you work with your players and what you're able to offer them. And if you're a head coach, why they're attracted to come and play for you and what you're able to offer, especially if you're helping them recover and you have a big focus on S&C within your team and you look at the sports science behind it. That's something which you could really drive in the long term as a head coach, and really be the team which has that great recovery compared to others. So there's a real great avenue for you to dive into from the work and your experience and your skills and your passion. But it also gives you diversity where, unfortunately, football is a very short game. Sometimes you might go into head coach role, you might be sacked within a month or so. But then you might find a job where you might be head of S&C in a club, and it gives you a chance to go back in, do a work for a year, and then get back into the coaching side because you're able to branch out and go, oh, I've also been a head coach, and suddenly they want you on the grass. So there's lots of different avenues. But I really like to say the fact that you do mention lots of different hats and being seen in those hats, and sometimes it does create a bit of a problem. But for you, you look at it trying to combine both, and how you put that together, which I think is a challenge. But I think if that's the kind of person that you want to be, and you've got the skills behind it and you've got the passion, then it will really shape it, who you are as a professional and who you are as a person. And there's nothing to say that you can't be both. And I find that sometimes when I'm reflecting, do I want to be a coach or do I want to be a teacher, or can I combine both, and how difficult can that be, or how great is it to use a bit of teaching and coaching and then use coaching and teaching? And it really does work so well. A lot of what my work is coaching individuals, and then I'll do the teaching around it, because I think a lot of teachers really lack the skills of coaching, and that's the biggest thing which they need when working with some of the individuals which they have. But I remember on a call that I had with someone a couple of years ago, and it's stuck in the back of my mind, and it is such a hard reflection point, but I'm glad that you sort of have argued the other side of it, right? And what they said to me was, a master of all is a master of none. And that sort of sat with me. And then I reflect on it most of the time, because I'm like, oh, that's so difficult. Do I want to be a coach or do I want to be a teacher? What kind of coach do I want to be? Do I want to be a head coach? Do I want to be a tactical coach? Do I want to be this kind of person? Do I want to be that? And then I find myself like really like toying with that idea, and really struggling with it. And then, you add podcasting into it. Now I'm like, right, now I'm a podcaster as well. But then I've got more strings to my bow, and it's like, right, actually, do I diversify in just this one area, or do I look at the whole thing? But that's something which is stuck in my mind that I reflect upon. But I love the way that you say it, because the whole skills which you have across your spectrum will develop you as a person and as an individual. Approach that you have will really combine the experiences which you give everyone else when they have your experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as a young person as well, I think when you're first starting out, they're like, you need one avenue, you need to go down here. But growing up, like my dad was a kind of huge influence on me, and he was always like, have as many strings to your bow as you can, makes you more employable, makes you more approachable, makes you more knowledgeable. Like, you can be like a whole package. And like that's something that's always stuck with me from childhood, of like, put as many strings to your bow as you can. And I do think when I was trying to be like 4 or 5 different things, it wasn't working. Like, it wasn't, because it was too many different things, too many different environments, and your head's all over the place, and you're just trying to get to the next day and the next day and the weekend. But I think you can have more than one. And I've heard that phrase before as well of, you know, if you've got too many things going on, you know, you need to have a niche, but there's nothing to say that you can't have a niche in 2 things or 3 things. And if you can manage it and it doesn't harm anyone, it doesn't harm your players, and it doesn't harm your environment, then I think you're only adding to that environment, and you're only adding to your players, and you're only trying to make that environment as good as it can be. But I definitely think, you know, there is that kind of, you should choose one, you can't do it all. And it's and I've always kind of been like, well, why like I'd like to do it all. I'd like to be in different kind of roles, and I've done the work to make myself as knowledgeable as I can, and I don't know everything by a long shot, but I think when you've gone, right, this is the S&C side of things, okay, this is the sports therapy and the physio side of things, and this is, okay, how can I combine that, especially if I'd like to be a head coach in the future and I'm employing people. I'd be going, right, this is what I'd like from an S&C perspective and this is what I'd like from a physio perspective. And I think that when you're in a backroom staff and you've got a lot of skills, I do think that helps a lot, because you can have conversations with people and bounce off people and just make that environment so much better. And especially when you're limited resources, if you're someone that can do 2-3 different roles, I just think you're hopefully valuable in that environment. But it's definitely hard. But I would like urge anyone, like, try different things. Don't just go down one route, because you might actually end up not liking it, and you could have tried X, Y, and Z to make it, okay, well, you know what, I don't really like physio, but the injury prevention side and the recovery side I love, but I don't really want to be examining people and doing that. That's kind of not my niche anymore. But S&Cing them and putting a program in place and talking about mesocycles is exactly what I want to do. And coaching and being the tactical person and being the voice on the sideline is something that I want to do. So I do think you can combine it, but I know there's a lot of people that would disagree with that.
But again, it's down to every individual perspective, because what works for you, again, might not work for someone else, and the same for you. And I love the sort of mindset that you have, where you talk about, not being shut down, not being pushed into one avenue and going, right, why can't I do this? And I absolutely am behind that attitude, because I say the same in university lectures. And when I speak to my lecturers, they're like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, tell me why. Give me a reason why, right? And I will challenge it. I will prove you otherwise, because you've now given me a challenge. I want to go and do it, right? And I'm firmly behind that. And when I work with some of the young students, which I have, and they say, sir, I want to do this, I'm like, great. And I'll support them all the way. And if they learn from it and they fail from it, then that's an experience where they go off and they find from what they want to do, right? And they'll have that experience, and some will get up and they'll push themselves more to do it. Some will then diverse into another area. So there's lots of different avenues which you can have. But what you said there about being able to combine, when you were talking about it initially, I was thinking, of a small women's team which don't have a lot of funding.
Yeah.
They might only have a handful of coaches. They have to hire out their facilities. Now, for you, you would be a perfect sell for them, because you're able to combine lots of different roles. They're like, well, actually, we could play Chloe this, and she can do this, this, and this. And then obviously over time, you might go, actually, I should be paid a little bit more for this, right? Because of everything I'm doing. But that's the realistic thing, because it gives you an opportunity to branch out, and then you never know, you might be on a sideline one day, and then the other club, which are a bigger club, are attracted to you, and suddenly you've made a bit of a profile, or again, you've been in these different circles, you've networked, and then you've been able to climb up the ladder. But I think you then find out who you want to be as a coach, because when I first started out, I had a very similar background to you. I was multi-sports coaching for a like the local authority. I was going into schools, I was doing youth clubs, I was doing funded programs, I was coaching golf, and I was doing all these different things. And it was great, because I had lots of different experiences, and it was fun. And then I was coaching like 18 months to 3-year-olds, and then 3.5-year-olds to like 5-year-olds, and that was a great experience, really fun, right? And years later, I'd done a lot of tactical coaching. I'd done a Cat 3 academy, and then when you're in the academy, that changes you a lot as a coach then. And then someone I knew was starting up a kicks academy, where they were doing like 18 months to free, and they said, do you want to be one of the lead coaches? And I was like, no, yeah, I do, because I want to support you, and it's a great adventure. And then at the time, then it just didn't work out for me. I had too many other commitments, and then I would just go in and cover the odd session one-to-one. I remember going back into the one session, and I was delivering it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. How did I do this every weekend? Like, I must have just got into a great swing. But at the end of it, I was like, oh, I don't miss doing this. and I knew there was a job there, and I knew I could have done it every Saturday, but I was like, I definitely can't get back into this environment. And that was part of my own growth, because I knew that I had that experience. I know I can cover it if I need to, but I don't miss doing it again. And then earlier this year, we set up a football club through the FAW. They wanted us to start 18 months to 3-year-olds. So then my best mate who coaches at the club was like, can you please come and do this program? I was like, yes, okay. We did it for 8 weeks, and then he's like, right, I want to do another 8 weeks. So I was like, I can't do 8 more weeks. I've got too many commitments. And to be fair to him, he still continued it. He's still doing it until next month. But initially I was like, this keeps bouncing back. I have to say no at some point. But you find out what works for you, and you grow into the type of coach and person that you want to be from those different experiences from the bow which you have. And yes, you might have those strings, and sometimes you might come back to them, but then they might not be your focus strings or your main strings as you get older.
Yeah, I totally. I think you have to try lots of different things. I think, especially with like kids as well in football, you have to kind of say, you know what, this might not, you might not like football in 2 years, you might not like it in 20 years, you might not, but for now, you know, they're in that environment with you. And I think it's so important to say, you know, you can do other things, you can do other activities. I think it's difficult when you get to that kind of 16 to 18 mark, when you're like, you're pushing first team, and you know, is this what you want to do? Because some people turn around to you and go, no, and you're like, oh, that's kind of frustrating because you're such a good player and you could make it. But I think you have to respect the fact that they might not play forever, and you know, we might not be in the same roles forever, and you have to try and explore that and figure out what you like. And I also think, like, no one can ever tell you what you kind of can and can't do as long as it doesn't harm anybody else. I always think, like, you know, go for what you want to go after and your goals and your environment. And yeah, I definitely think you can try different things and influence, you know, other people in terms of, you know, what do you want to go after and supporting their goals. And, you know, it might be, I want to try this on the pitch today. Okay, go for your life. If it fails, it fails, doesn't it? You know, and if having too many strings to your bow and trying to be in 3 different places at once doesn't work, you kind of do have to sit there and go, okay, it's not working. Like when I was 4 or 5 different things, I just thought my head is going to explode. Like there's so many different avenues that I'm trying to explore. So I think I did have to make that decision of, okay, I don't want to go down this route anymore, but I can combine a role in one club and the club that kind of covers the 2 things that I want to go after. So I think you can definitely adapt that to what your needs are and what you desire to be.
I love what you just said there, and the teacher within me is going, please don't ever lose that, Chloe. Please keep what you please repeat that to yourself, right? And honestly, it's true. And when I work with the young people that I work with, I look at them and I'm like, please don't ever lose this. Please be the person which you are. Please challenge other things. Please go in and go into those environments and say, why can't I do this, right? And that's something which I'm really supportive of them. Some other members of staff see it a bit of a different way. They're like, they can't do this. I'm like, no, they can. Let's go and challenge the status quo. Let them be raw. Let them go and challenge. Yes, okay, we can coach them in how they communicate, and that's a bit of a learning curve, and that enables us as teachers to really educate them a little bit more. But then that's what the art of teaching is, and that's how I view it anyway. But I really hope that you live by your own mantra there, and honestly take that forward with you and instill that within your players in terms of everything that you do, which is really important. Now, there's just one sort of avenue which fits into what you just said, and you've been a mentor yourself. You've been part of a mentoring program. Now, what has mentoring done for you, and how different is mentoring and coaching?
Yeah, I think they're very different because you're looking at it from an outside lens of somebody else and how they coach. And I think you kind of have to go, they're not going to be like me, and that's okay. Which I think is really difficult when you go, oh, I'd do it like this, or I'm a lot more vocal. But I actually think sometimes the quietest coaches and the ones that look and observe are the best coaches. Like I genuinely believe that. So I think the mentoring program taught me, and I'm still on it actually, did a little bit last year and doing it this year as well, has really taught me like to observe, and just like what you see is so important. And I think that's helped me on the sideline as well. But I think mentoring, you're looking at it from not necessarily a success point of view. So, you know, it is, the environments I've been in have been mainly results driven as such. So you're looking at it as, what are they bringing to the environment? Success, it doesn't matter whether they're winning, losing, drawing every week, doesn't matter. But how are they in that environment? How are they coaching? How are they nurturing the kids? How are they supporting the kids? And I think being a mentor is hard at times because you are the role model, and you think, God, why am I the role model out of everyone? But it's been really nice because I actually took a few for a session a couple of weeks ago, and that was really nice because I think they could kind of see me in my environment and come into my environment and have a session and go, oh, this is what she coaches like. And I've been out to a few visits of how they coach, and then I go to a game day as well, because I think how you are in training to a game day is two very different people. I would say I'm two very different people that I'm trying to kind of align out. But yeah, I think the mentoring program's just offered such a different perspective for me in terms of what I need to be looking at, and also kind of made me reflect on my own coaching of what do I look like to observe? You know, because you're observing other people, but you think if someone was observing me, what are they seeing? And I've been lucky enough to be mentored for quite a few years now. I got like 2 or 3 of probably the best mentors that I could ask for in terms of loads of different scopes of practice. One of them's a female who I've worked under for a long time, in Sam Griffiths, and she gave me the Derby County Women opportunity. So it was amazing to come into her environment and see her and know the female challenges. And then I've had like 2 male influences in like Pete Langsley and Alex Walker, who've just been on hand for coffees constantly on advice. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? So I think being that person where they can come and ask you questions and come and be, you know, honest. And like, I've been completely honest with the 2 girls that I currently mentor and been like, it's hard. Like, if someone's going to sit here and tell you it's not hard, like it is. And there's days you go, why am I doing this? Like, this is difficult. But then you have days where you go, this is exactly why I do this. And like, you look around and go, wow, like, why am I here? So I think it's offered me a different perspective for one, but it's also offered me that I'm going to be your honest voice and tell you that it's difficult, and maybe tell you what I didn't get told. Like when I first started, of, you know, things are hard and there's times where you don't know what to do. You're going to be stood there going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I've got to try and run a half-time team talk and I don't know what to say. Or I've got to try and deal with an incident that's just happened and I don't know what to say or do. I don't know how I'm meant to go about this. So I think just being that really honest person, and also maybe I reflect, I think, a lot more on my sessions since, going, you know, should I have acted like that? Should I have done that? Should I have been, you know, really, really involved, or should I just sat back and watched? Should I, you know, be the different perspective? So I think it's definitely challenged me, and hopefully the 2 girls who are coming into it kind of understand that it is tough, but they still want to do it, which is amazing. And, you know, just setting goals, I think, for them so that they know where they'd like to go, and I will do everything I can to help them get there through contacts and kind of what I've learned and what I know. And I think I'm dead honest and I say I don't know everything, but I'll tell you how it is, and I'll be honest with you and try and navigate you through the crazy world that is coaching. So yeah, I think that's kind of what it's offered me.
I think it's so important to look at the differences between coaching and mentoring, and it's great that you've given that insight. And I like what you said here. What do I look like to observe? And I think that's such a great question, and it's great reflection as well to have. And it gives you your own opportunity to look at how you've delivered your session, your communication, the words that you said, how often you said certain words, what the information is that the players are taking on board, the contact time between the talking time, for example. And there's lots of different ways you approach that as a coach. And again, you tweak things, you take things away. And then you've also spoke about how the girls which are coming onto the program, how that might look for them. And it's great because you're already looking at the transition and you're looking at going from mentor to coaching. But as you were saying that, you said, oh, this is a bad day. Why am I here? And you're given that perspective. Now, already then as the coach in me, I've started to go, well, how difficult might that be then if I've got Chloe sat in front of me, she's shut down, how difficult that might be. She doesn't really want to engage. It's going to be a tough conversation. I might not get much out of her. Perhaps she doesn't want to be coached today. And then just putting that together for anyone who's listening, right, is as a coach, you might actually experience that with some of your players, and they might have had a difficult day, and the next week might be a very different session if you're coaching them. And this is not primarily on the grass, but this is something to consider in that relationship. And then you look at some of the reasoning behind that, and then you get to unpack that. And coaching is not, right, okay, Chloe didn't want to talk about it, next week she will. Tick, success, right? You know, that might be 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks of gradual process of just tweaking it, just asking different questions, that types of different communication, types of questioning, the different types of feedback, how often you're engaging with them, all these different types of things. But it is a process of coaching and mentoring, and you won't see that success within the first few weeks. And sometimes coaching takes a few few years as well for certain individuals, right? And that's something which I'm doing now with some of my students. And I'm leaving my job at the end of the year to go back to university. And the biggest thing for me is I know they're going to miss out on that continued coaching next year. And it's really pulling on my heartstrings a little bit, right? It is difficult, and I know I'm going to dread going back on Monday because I know I've only got a limited amount of time. But it is an important journey to be on. And it fits into the next part, which we're going to talk about now, which is your health and recovery, right? Because mindset is so important. I think that mentoring and coaching, which you have, the way that you have that outlook on life. So I will unpack that a little bit more and touch upon that whole reflection in terms of the next bit, which we're going to transition on to. But Chloe, this is sort of the most open we're going to be in the conversation, right? And whatever you feel comfortable with, please, tailor it to what you want to do, right? I'm just going to be here to guide the conversation and maybe ask questions, right? And then it's up to you what you want to do and deliver, right? But I was stopped the one day. I was scrolling through LinkedIn. I was doing some, typical, Monday morning reading, catching up on things. And I stopped on your post and I was reading it. And it talked about you suffering a stroke. And initially when I read it, I was like, this girl can't be that old, surely. She's had a stroke at her age. And what are the factors behind this? You can talk about recovery, and you've been doing it for 6 months. How obviously it's, stopped your coaching journey at that time. You touched upon it at the start where you're on a phased return and you're still part of that. This is where we're at with it. But November 2024, you suffered a stroke. So where did that occur? Why did that occur? What happened? What was the experience?
Yeah, it was probably like the worst day probably of my life, to be honest. I drove into work as normal. I was working with Birmingham City Foundation at the time. I was like on cloud nine with everything. Everything was going really well. Didn't drive in that day thinking that anything would be any different. So yeah, I literally got out of the car as normal. Was talking to the security guard at the time who was there every morning. We're talking about the Christmas market because it was kind of the Birmingham Christmas market had just started. He's like, I'm going this weekend. I was like, oh, that's going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden, was like this block where I just couldn't talk back. It was like I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't talk back and nothing was coming out. And you just think, oh, maybe it's a bit of an anxiety thing, or maybe something's going on. And, in that moment, you don't think, oh, I'm having a stroke. So I just walked away and I thought, how rude he must think I am that I've walked away. But he knows me very well. So he knew that I wasn't being rude. And I walked from the car park to the office, which I don't know, it's maybe a minute, if that, 30 seconds. And on my way, I dropped my bag and my keys out my right hand. And I just thought, like very suddenly, and I just thought, that's really weird. So I did probably what anyone would do and just picked it up with the other hand and carried on walking. And I actually rang my dad in the car park and was like, this has just happened. Like, I'm kind of a bit stressed about it. And he was like, I think you need to go and tell someone, like now. And I was like, oh, no, I'm fine. He's like, no, you need to go and tell someone. And I was like, okay. So I went to the receptionist at the time. She was like, oh, how are you today? And I was like, I'm not good. This is just happening in the car park. But my brain was on like 100,000 miles an hour. So I was trying to tell her everything that had happened. And she was like, you're not making any sense. Like, you're slurring your words. Like, your arm, you can't even lift up. Like, something's going on. And I was like, I think we need to call 999. So we did. And my dad actually told me later on that I'd said something's just happened in the carpet instead of car park, and I was getting like words muddled up. So that's why he was like, go and tell someone. And then that morning, 999 call, got ambulanced in, but I was misdiagnosed or missed that it was a stroke. So I spent the night in hospital. CT came back normal. They were like, everything's come back okay. We're going to do an MRI in the morning. If that comes back fine, you can go home. And I was like, oh. So I'm on the phone to my mum and dad because I was in Birmingham at the time, obviously, and they're down here in Hull. I was like, don't come, it's fine. I'm going home tomorrow, so I'm fine. I had people there, and so everything was fine. And I was just like, wow, like what a whirlwind. But I was going, I'm going to go home tomorrow night, have a Chinese takeaway, everything's going to be fine. And then the MRI came back, and this doctor came in and just pulled the curtain around, and I just knew based on her face. And she was just like, I'm really sorry, but the MRI shows a stroke. And I was like, it's like in that moment, my world just went, wow, like everything's just kind of gone. They're like, so we're going to transfer you to the stroke ward now. And I was like, wow, okay. So I had to have that phone call with my mum and dad going, are you sat down? Like, this is what's happening. And in that moment, I don't really know what I was thinking. I was just kind of like, okay, right, fine. And I remember saying to myself, like, it's fine because we're going to get through it. Like, it's fine. But I had to reteach myself a lot of things. So my right arm, I did a lot of rehab with my right arm in terms of like grip work, and I had to do like a kitchen assessment, which is the weirdest thing. If anyone's ever had to do that, you have to make a cup of tea and like pour hot water from a kettle and see if you can pick it up, and had to relearn the stairs again and everything. And it was just like, hang on, like this morning I was in Birmingham going to work. I had a friendly against Crewe on the evening that I was buzzing for. And then I'm in a hospital bed on the stroke ward, wondering what the score is. And all of a sudden, your perspective and your priorities just completely change, because you're going, actually, I've got none of this stuff next to me without my health. And it just kind of, stemmed from there. And I had to move back home, it's a really difficult transition when you're used to kind of living on your own and you've got your own place. And my life is in the Midlands, as daft as that sounds like it is. That's where all my teams were at the time. That's where my full-time job was. I was full-time at Birmingham. And all of a sudden, overnight, you lose your flat. You lose kind of everything that you knew. So I moved back here, was under the stroke team and still am. In terms of how it caused it, I was asked loads of questions. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you, do anything that we might be concerned about? And I said no. Like I've never smoked in my life. I rarely drink. They asked me what I did. I was like, I'm a football coach, and they were like, right, like, so you're active? And I said, I gym 4 or 5 times a week. I'm an S&C coach. I was like, you couldn't get any fitter than me. Like I do everything. I eat really clean. And it was kind of like this mystery for like 4 or 5 days of why it had happened, what had gone on. And I actually, because they missed it, couldn't have any treatment. So within 4 hours, you have to get the clot busting medication in your system to kind of burst the clot. And I didn't have that. So I always say, like, my body fought it itself without the medication, which is quite cool. But then I had a jelly scan on my heart, and they were like, oh, you have a hole in your heart. And I was just like, like, there's another kind of curveball that I didn't expect. So that's in the process. I'm under like cardiology at the moment. It will get closed eventually. I've had so many up and downs with my heart the last 6 months of being in and out of hospital, and heart palpitations and all of that. But everything is fine structurally now. It's just the hole. So we've kind of got everything under control. But that they think is the cause. Because of the hole, they think a clot's kind of passed and gone to the brain when it shouldn't have done. So yeah, that was kind of the journey. And then you kind of sat there going, I have to rebuild everything from scratch. Like, I have to go again. And I thought, I'll be back at work in January. Like, I genuinely did. I was so like naive of what was happening. And then I thought, I am exhausted. I think the main effects for me was like fatigue, was just like when you wake up and you feel fine every day and you're doing 12, 13-hour days and everything's fine, and you suddenly get up and go, I can't get off the sofa today. I couldn't walk far. I literally had a wheelchair at the time. My trip out was to like Aldi. Like that's how the days were. Like, get in your wheelchair, we'll go around Aldi, and then I'd sleep for 3 hours when I got home. Like, it was a really scary place to be, and really lonely. Like, as much as I had such an amazing support network, like, I wouldn't have got through it without my mum, dad and brother. Like, they were amazing. And I wouldn't have got through it without Super Sunday either, because I just sat and watched football the whole time. But it's lonely because you're going, no one else is going through this at my age. No one else is experiencing what I'm experiencing. Moved back here, gave up my flat, couldn't drive for 4 weeks, which when you're in the car constantly, you're like, how do I get anywhere? So yeah, that was scary. And then you're doing stuff for the first time, going, right, I have to leave the house on my own. What if I have a stroke? What if it happens again? What if I feel funny? So there's all that kind of like anxiety around it as well, which I think is so important to talk about, because the first session I ran back when I was home, so I was back after, I think I counted it was like 100 and something days, so it was like 4 or 5 months of hard work and in the gym trying to rehab. But I'm used to being in the gym and lifting weights heavy and, you know, running and cycling and all of that. And now I'm on a Bursu ball trying to balance because I've lost all my balance. And you're just like, this is so frustrating. But my first session back, I was like, I was confident. Like before, I kind of didn't really care what anybody thought. I was really like, this is what I'm going to do. And I looked at the pitch at St. George's on my first day back and went, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Like I feel completely out of my depth. I remember saying to one of my colleagues, is this box big enough? Is it not? Is it like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, you're fine. I was like, yeah, but I've been away for so long. And you go, the old me, I always call it the old me, is very different to now because I've had a huge health scare and experience. So yeah, that was very long, but that's kind of what happened, and unpicking certain bits. And yeah, we're still on the journey, but we're getting there, just kind of waiting for the heart surgery now to fully be able to go, okay, close that chapter a little bit.
It's not a problem how long you took on that, mind. There's no pressure on that. And, you know, as I sat back and just listened to you, there was a few F's and S's in my head, like, oh, you know, and it's incredible because, you know, 21, 22, and you've experienced this, and you're looking at recovery and how it stopped your, say, normal life, right? Where you're
Yeah.
going into the gym and doing what you love. And you know, as you got your own space, and suddenly you don't have your own space, suddenly you're not going to the gym for what you want. Suddenly your natural thing is to get your keys, walk out the door, bang, you're in, you can't go to the shop. Now, for you, you're walking to the door, and then suddenly you might be stopping by the door going, oh, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
if I can do this on my own, right? And that is a huge mental sort of barrier for you
Yeah.
to overcome. And just to find that confidence, to overcome that anxiety, to try and find, you know, that individualism which you've got in your own self, that independence. And it can be hard to have that recovery. And when you talk about having a hole in your heart, my uncle had that, and he had those different experiences. So when I was younger, I grew up. Sort of seeing him in and out of hospital, seeing how my mum was, you know, my granddad at the time, and I remember the whole situation. And it's a very, you know, unpleasant experience to have, you know, especially as a youngster. But how unpleasant it was for him, right? And you talk about, you know, being on your own, no one else is going through this, and it's sort of, as you said, that I was reflecting upon him, reflecting upon you, and I was reflecting on my friend Jordan. And Jordan is someone that I mentioned a little bit earlier on. He was the lad who had cancer. He's had it twice, and you know, by the age of 25. He also then hit a bit of depression, and then well, I say a bit of depression, right? He hit depression. He still experiences that now. But as you said there, what it's like to be there, I was thinking of him at that time of, you know, he's going through cancer, and you know the operations he's going through, and it's tough, especially when you feel that you're on your own, you're isolated, and you think, you know, why me, and all these different questions, and then you're like, right, where does my career come in this? And then you spoke about your priorities there and your perspectives, and you know, have to put my health first because you're thinking about the game and what the result is, and your love and passion coming through. But you then sort of go, right, actually, that is the least of my priorities right now. I have to prioritize myself. And that sort of gives you a bit of a perspective as well when you sort of have your phase routine there, and that recovery, because your health still has to be your number one priority even now, right? Especially as you have heart surgery on the horizon, and you know you're looking towards that. But you know, you've got that heart surgery coming up, and you know it's for such a great cause to, you know, improve your health and support you, right? But are you anxious for it in any way, or are you more excited? And I know that's a weird word to put in there, right? But are you more excited to have that because you know it's going to be a benefit to your health?
I think a little bit of both. I think I would be lying if I said that my anxiety has not gone through the roof since everything that happened from November. But I am excited because I know that that's kind of the final piece of the puzzle to just go, okay, once that's sorted and I've recovered from that, hopefully everything is then stable. I might not be perfect health, but I'm stable and I know that it kind of can't happen again, or it's a very like low chance that it's going to happen again. And I think it will give me relief more than anything of like, okay, it's closed. Every time my heart palpitates, I'm not going to get worried. I think I am scared because I've never had surgery before, never been under kind of general anesthetic or anything, so I am worried for that. But I think, you know, I've got through a stroke at 22, which is not many people can say that. But I think, you know, I am a fighter and I've always kind of grown up to be tough, and I think I will get through it. But I think it's going to be tough, and it's going to be a bit of a process. But I think once that's over and done with, I will start to feel better. They literally said to me, like, the surgery will be life changing for you, and you won't even realize, like, the fatigue will decrease, your circulation will be better, you'll feel better, everything will be better, because it won't be able to flow through that hole and go to places it shouldn't be going. And they mentioned about my oxygen levels and things will improve. So yeah, I think a little bit of anxiety, but I think it'd be relief more than anything.
Even though you got that anxiety and you got your love for the gym, right? And you say you are taking a little bit easier in the gym compared to what you were because you're still on that recovery phase. But when you see those weights sat across from you and you know you want to lift what you usually lift, is there a little bit where you might go up to it and go, oh, actually, I'm on, say, 70, which is what I usually lift. Or actually, I might just drop to 30 because that anxiety is just there within you?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've also gone the other way and made the error of, I'm fine today, I feel great, so I'm going to try and lift what I used to lift. And then you have a harsh reality of, you can't do what you used to do. And I think that's really difficult to go, I used to, like, for example, leg press over 100 kg, and now you're starting me on 20. I'm like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. Like, it really doesn't. But I think, yeah, the anxiety does creep in at times, especially if you're having a bit of a bad day or a bit of a fatigue day. You have to put your body first and go, you know what, maybe I can't go today. Or maybe it is a surfer day watching the football, or a surfer day watching the telly. Like, you do have to do that. And I think that's really hard to admit. But I think sometimes you have to do that, or you have to cancel plans, or you have to cancel a session, or you have to cancel work. And that's difficult for me, when I've always been someone who, like, prides himself on being on time, being consistent, always showing up and being hard work. I think it is difficult to go through that anxiety of, oh, can I today? Can't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Like, it is a bit of a battle in your head of, how far can I push? How much can I go back to work? Can I up my hours this month? Because I get reviewed kind of every month in terms of hours. Sometimes I've had to be honest and go, do you know what? I don't think I can push my hours this month. And that's really hard to admit when all you want to do is get back to what you used to have. But I think, yeah, the anxiety does definitely play a part. But you've got to learn to just go, you know what? I'm just grateful to, if I run one session this month, that's a lot more than I could run in November, December time. If I can go out for a coffee and feel fine. Like, it's just, I appreciate the little things a lot more than I used to. Just like waking up and feeling okay and being able to go for a walk. I couldn't walk to the end of my drive when I come out of hospital. So to be able to just go on a little walk, even if it's just around the estate, or we've got a coffee shop near us and it's about a 10-minute walk. So that was the goal. Coming out of hospital, can we get to the coffee shop? And it took us about 3 months, but we got there. And then I thought, I can't get back, so my dad had to go and get the car, come and pick me up. But the fact that we'd got there, and I think just setting little goals, and I've had to take a little bit of advice from myself, which I don't normally do, around rehab and S&C, and don't not follow your own advice, because you wouldn't be doing this if it was a player. You've got to kind of do it in a structured way, which I think is really important. But it is tough, definitely a mental battle as well at times. But it's nice to see some progress, because I look at what I was like in November, December. I didn't really have a Christmas, I didn't really go out. So I'm really looking forward to Christmas this year, in the hope that my heart's fixed by then and everything's a little bit more happy and not so much around the stroke and everything. So yeah.
And of course, it's that difference in a year between what you said there, between not going out, and how different Christmas would have been compared to usual Christmases, and whether it be a work still or you go on a night out with the girls, etc. And you didn't really have that, and it was more masked by a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of sadness and a little bit of missing work, and there's all these different combinations which are come in, and then a mass a wider perspective of, actually there's a lot which I'm missing out on, and that overcomes you, and hopefully this year will be a more positive. And then you would have had that one little bump in the road for the year, and then you're back on your recovery, and you got that more positivity for the future, which you talked about there. But I think it's important that you set those little goals, and you had that reflection piece where you were going, right, actually I need to just get to the coffee shop now. I'm not going to push myself. I need to just take that pressure off, because we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do things, especially if we miss things so much. We want to get back really quickly, but actually getting back quicker than what we're anticipating to get back for might actually do us more harm and delay delay us getting back to where we need to be, right? And it's great that you've had that support around you in terms of your parents and, you know, going on that walk and your dad getting in the car and coming back to pick you up. And, you know, even you talking about, you know, perhaps I can't do as many hours this month, and just understanding, right, actually, I'm usually this morning I'd be doing this with the players. And yes, I missed that, but actually it's nice just to sit in a coffee shop with my mum and catch up with her, for example, right? Or actually I've just been for a walk. There's lots of different things within that. And there is another sort of alternative perspective here, because as a coach, you talked about your high standards, your high energy, your high values, and you know, reflecting upon what you said there and looking at relationship and communication, you might have a coach who pushes their players really hard. They want them to get back. They have you know, this standard where they want to get the players on the pitch and they want to utilize them. And we saw this in the Premier League a few weeks ago, where the player ended up in a coma, right? Because they're trying to get him back too quick. But then you sort of have to go, well, I might have my standards, where actually there's a player at the heart of this who might be on health recovery, who might be injured, who might have had these different experiences. How do I support them over where my standards are, and then look at their recovery rather than trying to instill the standards at all times?
Yeah, I agree. I think you definitely have to be realistic. I think that's a huge takeaway from me since the stroke, is you have to be realistic on what you can achieve. You know, especially now I've returned to my environment, I think you have to be realistic in terms of, okay, what can I get out of this session today? I'm not going for 10, 12 things. I'm going for 1 or 2 things, because actually, realistically, they're only going to retain so much information. So I was very much, especially when I started out, trying to give them like loads and loads of information when I started off with under 10s, and I'm like, they can't retain that. So I think that's a massive thing. I think for me as well, my biggest takeaway from it is you have to be present. You have to be in the moment. Sometimes you don't stop and smell the roses, and I'm a huge, you know, example of not doing that. And I think now every session before we start, I kind of just stand there and appreciate what I've got, because you never know when it's going to get taken away from you. And mine did, and my whole life changed. And I always think everything happens for a reason. And it's made me a much tougher person, much more present. And I think I gained a lot of time back that I lost in football. You know, I was away from home. You know, I missed birthdays, I missed Christmas, I missed a lot of things. So to be able to come back and just get that time back with family that I'd longed for so long, in really poor circumstances. But I always said to people, you know, I've got back a lot of time that I've lost. You know, I've been able to be at home. I've been able to have my mum's cooking. I've been able to watch the football with my dad. And I think you have to look at it from that perspective, because if you don't, you're going down a really deep hole of, you know, why me? And I have had those days, but I think you've got to see the positives. And now I appreciate the little things so much more. I think being more present, not only in life in general, but in my environment. I think being present with the players and being realistic with them. And if they're coming to you, I think maybe when I first started, I would have been you know, oh, you're all right, you know, carry on, it's fine. Whereas now I'm like, no, we like player, person before player, 100%. You know, let's put the person first. If they're complaining of something, then we need to bring them off the pitch, because it's not worth the risk. And I think hugely around, I did my dissertation on like concussion and head trauma. And I think since the stroke, it's massively changed my perspective on that as well. Like, don't take the risk. If they've gone down and they've clashed heads, they're coming off. They're not going back on the pitch. They're not playing on. Like, even as a head coach, I think I would put my foot down if the physio ran on and said, no, we're going to carry on. I'd be like, absolutely not. Because I think based on what I've learned about my brain and the clots and the bleeds and everything that can happen, it's just not worth the risk. So yeah, I think my biggest takeaway: be present and just be realistic as well with what you can start doing. That, you know, counts towards football as well, and players in your team. You know, be realistic on what they can do and what you're aiming to do, and everything in between, really.
Another great part of your mantra there, right, and part of your coaching philosophy. But I think it's important, and what you said there, you know, having that realistic reflection upon what you've missed out on, those birthdays, those moments. Because I remember being a young coach, and I really wanted to coach, and I really wanted to make it, and I sacrificed going to my dad's graduation to coach. And now I look back, that's one of my biggest regrets, right? I'm like, you have to take those moments back, because otherwise they pass you by, and so you miss your youth, and you miss all these moments. And sometimes, yes, you have an ultimate goal that you want to get to, but actually you've sacrificed too much at the same time, where you don't have those great memories. You missed out on your youth. And that's where I try to reflect on, when I coach my under 19s, what bit of leeway can I give them, and trying to combine coaching and management and putting that together. And I think that's where you you have these opportunities to reflect and learn from coaches like yourselves, because at the start someone might have been right, I want to be a coach, I want to be high strict, I want to do this, I want to get energy, I want to do that, and now they could have taken that away, and that's exactly who they are. Actually, now they've listened to you, they've actually unpacked a bit more of your philosophy and how they combine that, and then they look at that communication, that relationship, how they support players, how they put the person first, looking at when a player goes down injured, the questions that you ask them, how you respond, and then how you instill your high standards, and then what you look at from a tactics point of view. Then you might look at health and recovery for certain individuals. You might look at what's happening in the background, and there's lots of different perspectives. And again, that's what will help coaches learn, but also through the importance of your story and of course what you've gone through, which is incredible. And even sitting back and the way that you talk as a 22-year-old, you don't come across as a 22-year-old, right? And I say this in the most positive, complimentary way. And it's like someone I've spoken to who is in their 30s, who has this life experience, who supported individuals with their recovery, who's had multiple career changes, who's looking at different transition, who's gone through mentoring. But you're doing all this at 22, and it's really incredible, and it's amazing that you've gone through this. And I'm taken back by listening to you and what I've taken away. But when you come to this sort of health and this recovery, and you look at the future, you've sort of taken this step back, you've had that reflection. Now, you've touched upon it at the start when you didn't appreciate what the coaches did and what they go through, right? And now you're a coach, you understand that between setting up, packing away, reflection, what you think about on your players. You've got the recovery, you might have conversations, you might be signing players. There's lots of different things which go into it, right? Your session planning, etc. And you do all this, and you've gone through this health recovery, you want to take this time back. Why, when you've gone through this, do you still want to be a coach, knowing how stressful that career path is?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, with the setback, I always think comes the comeback. And I think it's made me so much more motivated now to go after what I want, because you never know what's going to happen, what's around the corner, what could get taken away from you tomorrow. So I think I've gone, that's my environment, that's me. Like, a lot of my rehab and kind of therapy and everything's been around, what do you want to be? Like, who's Chloe? Like, what is she? And I'm like, she's a coach. Like that like that's what she is. So I'm just like, it's really weird when they kind of ask you that, like, who's Chloe? I'm like, I don't know, it's just me. But they try and get you to unpick it in rehab to have a goal. And I think my motivation in terms of success in football has massively changed. Like, sometimes it's not results, sometimes it's about creating good people, creating a good environment, making memories that they're going to remember. I'd like to think that players who've been under me will have good memories and have, lasting messages. And I think I've always wanted that from young. And I think when it gets taken away from you, you appreciate it a lot more. So I think now I'm looking at it from a different perspective of, have to go after it, and I might fail. And I think I put myself in, uncomfortable situations now that I maybe didn't. I take the older age group, I take, boys now as well, which is a different perspective and comes with a whole host of different aspects that you can go down. And I think I've gone, yeah, you know what, I'm going to take the under 14 boys today, or I am going to take the seniors today, or I am going to come and do a podcast, even though it's really out of my comfort zone. Like, I think you put yourself in them situations because you think, why not? Like, what's the worst that can happen? So I think I am now looking at the coaching going, what's the worst that can happen? You fail, you get sacked. Oh, well, we'll go again. And I think when you've had a stroke and you've gone, God, I've got to go again, you then take that with you in every kind of aspect of life. Right, this has gone wrong, I've got to go again. Right, I've not done very well this weekend, we go again. We've lost 7 on the trot, we've got to go again. Like, and you kind of have that. And I think coaching's massively helped me with my recovery, because you do have massive setbacks and you do have times where things are, not going the way you'd like it to go. So I think it has to be coaching, because I always say coaching's my happy place. And I think when you've had your happy place taken away from you, you've got to try and get it back. So I think and I've kind of got it back slightly, because even though I'm on a phase return, I have got it back, but now I want it back full time every day, back down in the Midlands, starting my life, rebuilding again. So that's kind of the process we're going through at the minute, trying to get a flat back down there for myself again, and up in the hours hopefully in time for the new season. That's the goal. So it's I think it's always going to be coaching, even probably when I'm like 60, but I might be slowing down a little bit by then. But yeah, it always has to be coaching, I think.
I love that, Chloe, and the way that you piece that, and the little quote which I've taken away from you when I piece that back together after I listen and I capture every word which you said. I think that is so touching, and there's a lot which I've taken away, just in terms of your mentality and the way that you've come across. And you said being out your comfort zone, being on a podcast, right? You can't tell whatsoever because you speak so well, and you come across really, really well, and you speak. So confidently, and the way that you portray and story tell, it's like someone who's done this multiple times, right? So it's definitely come natural to you. But I've got a limited amount of time left with you, which is a shame because I've had such a great time, and I think there's so much in there, and it's been nice to be on that journey where we've really talked about coaching.
Yeah.
Then we've spoken about your health and recovery, but then we've also talked about your influences, your early life, how you got into coaching, where it's come from, a bit of your background and experience. But one thing I like to do with coaches at the end is two activities. So the first activity I'm going to give you is 30 seconds, and how many coaching tips can you give me in 30 seconds? And then we're just going to finish on a quick fire round of some nice questions to finish on. And then we should be done in time, Chloe, if that's okay.
Yeah, God, coaching tips. Okay.
Perfect. So the time is going to come up, and as
Okay.
soon as it starts counting, you're ready to go.
Okay. I would say get involved. The first thing, get involved. Make sure you're prepared. Plan your session. Get there on time. Set up at least kind of 10, 15 minutes before so you can have a look at it. Be okay with making mistakes. Adapt your session if it's not going well. Change the size of the pitch. Change whatever you need to, and be there for your players and person before the player.
Amazing. I love that. Really well done. Lots of coaching tips in there. And again, where you said to get there, get set up, have the opportunity where players can come in and you're organized, and touching upon what you said earlier, where you got that activation activity, I think is really important. And just quickly, is your number one tip, would it be person before player?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Perfect. Okay, so we got our quick fire questions now,
Okay.
and then nothing to catch you out. So, what is your favorite film?
Or The Lion King.
Good film, good film. Apparently, I used to watch that a lot when I was younger. My mum said I used to have it on all the time. I try not to watch it now as an adult because I can't have people see me crying at certain stages.
I still
So,
cry every time.
I try to hide away from that one, unfortunately. Your favorite TV show?
Oh, that's difficult. I really like Married at First Sight. Maths, that would be mine.
You started off really well and it sort of dropped off there. Well, my mum, I was speaking to my mum a couple of months ago, and she said, "Oh, maths is on tonight," and I didn't think much of it. And then the next day, I was like, "Oh, what's this maths about?" And I actually thought it was about maths and working things out and a challenge. And she's like, "No, what are you on about? I'd never sit there and watch that. It's this Married at First Sight." I was like, "What's my dad doing, sat there watching this with her?" I was like, "What's going on here?" Right? What is your favorite meal?
My mum's fajitas.
Nice.
100% home cooked meal any day, especially when you're on the road all the time with coaching and you come home to like fajitas. Oh, so good. That's my all time from childhood.
At least when you moved back home, you had that to enjoy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite book?
Ooh. I like an autobiography, and I think the best one I've read is probably the Rob Burrows autobiography. Such a good insight to everything, and so devastating, but so many key takeaways from it.
And if you were to recommend any book, would it be that one or a different book for coaches?
The coaches, I can't remember what it's called, but it's called something like The Coach's Finish Line, I think, or something around that. And it's like the journey of what could go wrong and how to kind of adapt. I think it's called The Coach's Finish Line. That's what I would recommend for coaches.
Cool. If you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
That's a good question. I think I'd go Emma Hayes, just because she's an absolute legend in the female game, and I'd love to see what a day in her life looks like.
Class. I think it would be great.
Yeah.
If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
I'd love to go to America. I've always spoke about that because I think the female game over there, well, the men's game as well, but the female game over there is ever growing. So I would love to go over to America and try and set a base up over there.
I'm in the same space as you, and I've spoken to so many American coaches, and when they look at their high schools and the college programs, and they talk about being in on the pitch and they're traveling, and some of the things I see, oh, America seems so cool as well at the same time, and I think
Yeah.
there's so much to offer. So it's definitely on my agenda. So great choice. If you could manage any team, who would it be?
Oh, it's got to be like Chelsea women or England women. I think that would be the goal. A WSL team 100%, but I think it's got to be England if you go in for glory.
You've made such a great comeback here. You dropped off with maths, but you've just recovered, right? So some great choices with Chelsea and England there. I'm well impressed, to be fair. And the mention of America. So you're doing well here, right? If you could manage any player, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would go. I'd love to manage Lucy Bronze. I think that
Good
would be,
choice.
yeah, because I just think her stamina is insane, and you could do so much with that in terms from an S&C perspective as well, but also from a coaching perspective. I think she's class.
I love the fact that you've mentioned it from an SSC
Yeah,
perspective. I think that's the heart of the coaching you there. All right.
yeah.
Who is your current role model and why in coaching?
Ooh, my current role model. I think probably Renee from Arsenal after she's just won the Champions League and what she's come in and done. And I think there was a little story around her playing when she was like 9 for Arsenal, and now she's taken them to the Champions League and won it. And I'm like, that is epic. So I think it's got to be Renee, definitely.
I think all they've done right is copy Chelsea men's from years ago, appoint an interim manager, and then they go on and win the Champions League.
Yeah,
So,
she's done a
um,
class job. Yeah,
but she has, and even when she was interim, she was just banging results in. I was like,
yeah,
surely you have to appoint her. And she's done such a great job in reality, especially when Barcelona, beat us at Chelsea and the play that they had. I think that's a huge achievement for her. To be fair.
yeah, definitely. She's done an amazing job.
Now, one of my questions here, right, was do you have any nicknames? But you've already told me that earlier on. So the puppy. Do you have any superstitions?
Oh, yeah, probably a few. I always, on a game day, I always get a coffee in the morning. That is like non-negotiable. So if I'm driving in, I'll stop at kind of like a Starbucks drive-through or a Costa drive-through, and get a coffee, and always have a coffee in the morning. I just think it sets you up for the day. In terms of match day, I always start with the same ball activation and have done no matter what the age is. And the same warm up. I like that. And they know what the ball activation is, so they get the cones, they put it out, and they do it. And I don't have any involvement, which I really like. But yeah, the coffee is the main one. 100% got to start your day right. Even if it's like a 6 a.m. kind of set off, I'm like, I've got to have my coffee
Hmm.
before I get there. And I like having a coffee like on the sideline, like just while I'm observing the warm up and stuff. And then I always finish it before the game starts. I can't have it like when the game starts for some reason. So that's my weird superstition, I think.
Interesting, interesting. What does reflection mean to you?
I think constantly learning is what it means to me. I think you have to learn from the best. I'm a massive believer in that. But I think you also have to find your own way in this crazy kind of environment and world that is football. But I think reflecting is being consistent and looking back. But also, I think you can look back too much and you can reflect too much and you can be too harsh on yourself. So I think it's about what's maybe not gone so well and what can we improve on. But also, massively, and I didn't do this probably until about a year ago, what's going really well that you're going to continue to take through your sessions and your management and everything. I think we're really, really quick to go, these are the negative, this is what's gone wrong, we've lost 3 on the trot and we've not scored. Or whereas you can go, yeah, but do you know what, we've been really consistent, we've pressed really high, they've done everything I've asked of them, or like they look like they've got a smile on the face. I think you can always take a positive from reflection. So I think, yeah, that's what it would mean, constantly learning and taking the positives more than the negatives.
Nice, nice. I like the way that you put that together. And the final one, and again, you might have touched upon this throughout the episode, but it's always nice to finish on. What is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
The environment, 100%. I think, especially having been in a backroom staff, I absolutely loved that. Just being with a team and everybody having their own strengths. And even when you don't have a backroom team and you stood on your own going, right, okay, I might be stood next to a backroom staff of 10, but I'm here on my own and I've got to try and sort it out. So I think, yeah, that would be the environment for me, and also kind of the rewards that you get from it, just from the kids, parents, yourself, just in terms of seeing them do well or seeing them like have enjoyment out of it. But yeah, the environment is, I don't think you can ever match the environment or the kind of enthusiasm and the, I always say you can't match a match day vibe. I've said that from day one. The match day vibe in personal life, work life can never be matched at all. I just don't think it can.
I completely agree. There's nothing better when you just touch the grass on the floor. You've got the ball in your hand. You know, you're just walking around the pitch. The players are arriving. You know that buzz. It's very special, right?
Yeah.
Some people might call us sad in reality, but you know, it's one of the great things which I do love. And one of the great things I love when it's a little bit damp and rainy and you kick the ball, you see the water just spray off the ball. Just little things, right? Just
Yeah.
little things.
Life, definitely.
But Chloe, I've had the most amazing time meeting you and speaking to you this morning, and listening to your story, which has been really open and you know, took me back when I was listening. And but honestly, it's been great to speak to you. It's been great to have this time where, you know, there's so many insights into coaching, and I love the little ways that you put things together, the quotes that you've really structured, you know, unintentionally, but they've come across as really nice quotes, right? And the purpose which you have, the mindset which you've deployed, and honestly, I wish you the best of luck in recovery. But I am so thankful for your time this morning.
No, thank you so much for having me. You've made my first podcast experience amazing. So thank you. And it's been really nice to kind of unpick everything, because I think you don't do that often enough, really. So it's been really, really nice. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for the feedback. And I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye, Chloe.
See you later.
But yeah, we try to be that group that can help be there for the players as a three, because I think you mentioned earlier, you want to have different characters in the changing room. You want to have different personalities. You don't want the same kind of people, because you're not going to be able to move forward. If you've got 10 people and they all agree the same things, you're going to get to a point in time where actually you're going to become unstuck. You need that one person to actually be like, nah, I don't agree with that. Or actually, we should try this. And I think that's why the huddle works, is we're all quite different as human beings. And I think you need three different people in there, because some players will naturally gravitate towards me and my personality, but equally some might go to the other two, and that's absolutely fine.